Well, hello and good evening. Back to painting some more. Experiencing technical difficulties, as usual. But looks like everything is finally up and running. For whatever reason, YouTube is causing me fits with my multi-stream. I go live on Twitch, but YouTube doesn't want to go live. Hold on a second. Stupid watermark. Okay. Anyway, where we ended last time, we were trying to finish off a couple of Neophytes, but apparently one of the faces I painted didn't fit. So we have to do a new face real quick. So we have to prep another face to be painted, and we'll get that done real quick, and we'll throw some paint on it. Unfortunately, it's snowing again. Yay. You know, the 14 inches we already got apparently just wasn't enough. We have to get more snow. Hey, Button, how's it going? All right, so just real quick, you said you're in Edinburgh, right? I checked to see the time difference, and it's like almost 2 o'clock in the morning for you right now. And you said you had to get up for a test. Like, do you sleep? It is very, very late. Ah, that makes more sense. Been there, done that. I noticed that, you know, of course, I know there's a significant time difference. I just didn't know how that went at first. So when I checked it, I was like, he was watching me at like 3 o'clock in the morning for him. Oh, we still have a couple more Neophytes to paint, but because I had that one head that wouldn't fit on my mini, even though I can't prime it because of the snow, I'm going to go ahead and paint a face anyway. Or attempt to. This should be interesting. But I got to clean up the mold lines on it real quick, because mold lines suck. And I need to find my knife. But, I mean, as you can see, like, right along the side of his face, got some pretty bad mold lines. Yeah, I know, you can dunk the spray can in warm water and let it heat up for a while. And you should be able to get away with it, but unfortunately, with it currently snowing right now, having to go outside to prime it, because I think the wife would get a little the wife would get a little cranky if I just sprayed it in my office real quick. But, you know, something, you know, small like a face, it won't be too big of a deal. Yeah, I haven't jumped on the airbrush bandwagon yet. I know for larger things like vehicles, getting smooth paint on your vehicles and airbrush would be amazing. But I don't know. Like I said, I just haven't really jumped on that bag. What? There's some weird stuff going on with this hair. It's like the back half of his hair doesn't match the front half of his hair. Which can, the overhead camera or the face camera? The overhead camera is my cell phone. It's like a Samsung S23 Ultra that I connect through an app called Camo. And the face cam is just some crappy Logitech webcam. Yeah, I was really surprised when I hooked up the cell phone. I just keep looking at it like, I don't know if you can see that or not. It's like his hair doesn't, on the back of his head doesn't match the hair on the front of his head. So it's really weird. But I guess it is what it is. I suppose I could be weird and like paint them like cat ears or something, which I will not do. I've been like off and on with D&D stuff, and when I first started mini painting was during 5th edition. Painted up a few Necrons. So like not consistently painting, but you know, I painted minis 15 years ago, and then for like D&D campaigns, I'd pick up minis and paint them from time to time. But I hadn't really sat down and done any significant painting until I picked up this new round of minis to get back into the Warhammer tabletop. So basically more consistent painting for like the last month, but I'm real particular. So I take forever trying to paint stuff because I want it to look nice when I eventually get it onto the tabletop. Okay. Trying to do things out of order. The last face I painted, I did it in a different order. I started with the eyes. I was told a different thing to try this time, so yeah, the last face I painted, I'll do a comparison. Like, this is one of the first faces I painted. Yep, that's kind of how I did it. So it's like I did the eyes last on this one, and of course they don't look the best. And again on this guy, I did the eyes last, and he's got like super crazy looking eyes, which I don't mind for a Black Templar. He's like, I'm gonna come over there and stab you repeatedly and maybe punch you a couple of times. I just had him. Yeah, I like how he turned out, but this is the last one I've painted, and I did the eyes first on him, and eventually when I put the mini together, this is going to be my Marshal, and I'm super happy with how he turned out. And then of course the one that I finished last night, it's not terrible, but I think I've gotten the eyes straightest on him out of all of them. But yeah, I'm gonna try doing a very bright white, and then doing the pupil. Yeah, I don't know what I did different. I used the exact same paints. Maybe I just did a little bit too much dry brushing on his face. Is what he's supposed to look kind of pale anyway. I jokingly call him Brother Seamus because he's pale skinned and redheaded. Because that's the type of sense of humor I have. Alrighty. Pardon my cracking Tupperware that I use for a dry palette or wet palette, dry palette. Come on, man, what are you talking about? But yeah, this time I'm planning on doing the eyes a little bit brighter white because I've been using like the Corax white because it's a little off white. And then very carefully try to avoid getting like any wash or anything in the eyes. But this time, and this is what the Games Workshop guy, when I went and picked up the Brutalis Dreadnought last weekend, he recommended like painting the eyes and then doing a wash over the eyes just to get some of the extra wash like down where the bottom of the eyelid is, but using a brighter white, it won't take as much of the wash won't discolor the eye as much if it's a brighter white. So I'm going to give that a shot. Making sure my paint is nice and thin. Some extra water out of my brush. Yeah, it is definitely a talent in its own. Because there are times where I won't get it thinned down enough, and other times I get it way too thin down. So then I had to put paint on it 57 times, and I'm trying, you want to use as little paint as possible, especially for eyes, so you don't gunk up the detail. Okay. And for the record, I have given up on trying to use paint for the eye, for the pupils. I just, like, you're using such a small dot of paint. It always dries up before I can get the dot in the eye. So this is my secret weapon. Like the first couple of faces, like the mini I finished, the first couple of faces, I painted the pupils on them. I could never get the pupils, the paint to dip in the eye very well. So I gave up, and I picked this up. Yeah, I've seen that too. Or they'll do like a dot of black, a dot of white on one side, then a dot of black, then a dot of white on the other side. I've watched so many videos on how to paint eyes because eventually, when I get the Helbrecht model, I want to paint him without his helmet on, but I don't want him all like cross-eyed, goofy looking. So I want to be able to paint his eyes right. So this is what I found works best for me. So just very carefully line up where you think you want your dot. And you add the pupils in with a very fine marker. As you can see, you got two nice, perfectly round little dots in there for his pupils. So that is how I cheat to paint my eyes. Now the big trick is to avoid getting any paint in the eyes now that they're painted. So we're just using some Cadian flesh tone. Is how I painted the arms. That's how I painted the other head that wouldn't fit, which irritates me. That the head wouldn't fit on the mini, so I have to paint another mini or another head. And of course, I've got lots of minis still to paint. Now we're just gonna put some skin on the guy. Like I said, being very careful to avoid his eyes. Oh, thank you for the follow, Josh. Yes, I'm in the U.S. Right smack dab in the middle in Kansas. Where we're currently getting more snow on top of the 14 inches we already got. Rhode Island. East Coast. Sometimes it's a little difficult to find the perfect spot to paint something this small to keep it in frame on camera. Doing tiny little faces. Yeah, it does. I didn't figure out how. I haven't figured out how to get the like an extra I haven't taken the time to add a TikTok link. It's the same, Dune underscore Gunner. I'm pretty sure. I think in the TikTok there's a link to my Instagram as well. But I got mad at Instagram for not sharing my stuff, so I changed the link, and I haven't changed it back. I need to get more pictures up on Instagram. I kind of make little TikTok clips and then just share them on X and Instagram and everything, and haven't gone back to fix them yet. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Like I said, I'll try and get more pictures over on Instagram. Like I said, they just made me cranky because they don't share anything. I mean, all my friends that I know in real life, I mean, they see it, they're like, "Yay, good job!" But they also follow me on TikTok, and the ones that have it, TikTok, and I don't think anybody that I know follows me on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it, because it is now the evil platform that you can't use anymore, or something like that. I don't know. I don't pay attention to that stuff. Just like, it's social media. If I want to build a following and get people to watch me, I have to be on social media. I don't really care where it's at. And I don't really care who watches my stuff, as long as you come by and are polite and want to engage and interact, we're fine. And as usual, I apologize for getting a little quiet when I'm doing teeny tiny details. And everyone has their own opinions on things. There are some beliefs that I have that other people don't share, and there are beliefs that others have that I don't share. And, all I'm concerned about is, be as respectful to one another as possible. People are allowed to disagree. I mean, I slightly disagree with you on the world's not flat. Have you been to Kansas? It's pretty flat out here. But no, the world as a whole is definitely not flat. I think there was some scientific study that was done years ago where they actually determined that the state of Kansas was flatter than an IHOP pancake. I'm sure your tax dollars hard at work on that one. I don't know your ex, but I mean, most people are more curvy than Kansas, so it's not a high bar to surpass. All right. Well, thanks for stopping by. We're usually streaming on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 7 to 10. I got off work a little late tonight, so I got started late. And Monday nights, I stream D&D sessions with a group that I've been playing with for a few years. So anytime you get a chance to come back in and stop in and say hi, I would greatly appreciate it. And again, thank you for the follow earlier. I mean, I try and keep up with social media posts, but I don't do a very good job at it. Well, I'd appreciate it. New people seeing the stream, and is always, potentially more followers, more people interested. And if it's on Monday, our Murder Hobo group on Tuesdays and Thursdays, watching me, squint at tiny little plastic soldiers. Alrighty. You do the same. Good night. Take it easy. All right. And now, dipping into my 15-year-old washes that I still have from the first time I bought a bunch of painting minis, because it's what I had at the time when I started painting these guys. So the wash we're going to use is Ogren Flesh, and to keep paint consistency to what I used on his arms, we're going to do that on the face. So everything is matchy-matchy. And I guess the moment of truth in this new attempt at painting eyes, because like I said, I'd usually just kind of get, avoid getting any of the wash in the eyes, but I've used a brighter white and pull some of that paint back out before it dries. But just to get those extra highlights around the eyelids. Hopefully that sits down in there nicely and makes the eyes look better. And any type of wash or ink or whatever, they are one of the most amazing things in your paint kit. Use them. It is 100% talent in a bottle. They just bring out so many details on the tiny faces, especially armor pieces. I think we're looking pretty good so far. Have to let that dry a little bit. And once the face dries again, we'll go back over it with a dry brushing of the Cadian flesh tone again. Just a little quick dry brush on it, and once all that dries, leave some of the depth from the Ogren flesh wash on the face, and then that should look really nice. Just kind of double checking the body that I did, make sure I don't have any spots that need touched up again. But yeah, I think that did really well on the eyes. Hurry up and dry so I can paint your hair. Paint your hair, paint the little doohickeys on the back of your skull and your collar. And I can stick you on my mini and have a second finished Neophyte. I'm really wanting to get these guys done so I can start playing the tabletop again. I've got this sparkling apple cider and she doesn't like it, so I have to drink it. It is non-alcoholic, so don't worry. It's just fizzy apple juice. The last time I played was during 5th edition. So like 15 years ago. When I was playing my Necrons and just getting into the hobby. I think I've got roughly 1,000 points of Necrons, but they're super old models that some they don't even make anymore. And unfortunately, due to the weather that we've had this week, yeah, well, I mean that's one of the things. You're forced to get old, but you never have to grow up, and I've definitely fall in that category. I am still very much a child at heart. I mean, obviously, I'm spending hours collecting, assembling, and painting little plastic army guys. Let's see. At this point in the year, I'm officially 42 and a half years old now. But I still have lots of time to get myself into stupid trouble before I really have to slow down. Yep. But see, we're the fortunate ones. We did all of our stupid shit that would have gotten us in a lot of trouble before the internet was really a thing. Kids these days, oh man, every stupid thing that they've done or do is on the internet, and the internet is forever. All right. Get the brush loaded up for this dry brushing. And that's pretty much as in-depth as I go into painting faces. Paint it, do a wash, then dry brush. And you can still see like the deeper lines around the mouth and the cheeks and his ears. So I think that's good enough for the tabletop. I'm not trying to win a golden demon or whatever they're called. And I'll kind of do a similar thing on the hair. Let's see. I think I'll go with some Steel Legion drab for his hair. We'll see how that looks. Change out the parchment paper and my wet palette. Cadian flesh, I'll do, and the next one because I do need to pick up more, another Primaris Crusader squad, because I do want the 20-man blob for when I start, eventually when I get to that point and I get closer to having a 2,000 point list or 1,500 point list. I'm gonna do Cadian flesh, and then the wash I was using is Ogren flesh. I don't know if they still make this paint anymore, or wash anymore. Oops, sorry, whacked the crap out of my microphone. I apologize if you're wearing headphones. But I did pick up some Gilliman flesh, because one of the videos I said use Cadian flesh and then paint Gilliman flesh on top of it. So I've been wanting to try that combination out. Because in the YouTube video I watched, the model ended up looking pretty good. And if you're doing, a bunch of guys where you can see their skin, like all of the Neophytes, you want a little bit of a variety of skin tone. For the paler guy, I can't find it. Nope, that's not it either. For the paler guy I think I did Rakath flesh, I think is what the paint's called. And of course I can't find my paint pot. There it is. Rakarth flesh with Rakarth flesh with the Ogren flesh. That's how it turns out. But that's just me, experimenting with paints. Got the paint super watery right now because I'm trying to get it to flow down along the edges of his hairline. Some of that water back out of the brush. This is one of the nicer things about these acrylic paints is how quickly they tend to dry, as long as you don't get an excessive amount of water in them. All right. Got a good base color on the hair there. No, unfortunately we went north. We went up into Ireland because a bucket list thing of mine to do. I was only over there for a week, but I really wanted to go see the Giant's Causeway. Just the rock formations up there are just super cool. Of course, we had to fly over to that part of. Yeah, we had to fly over. It's been so long, I forget where all we went, but mostly, and when we were in Scotland, we went to Edinburgh a few times. We stayed in Stirling because that's where my now wife is going to university for a study abroad program. Went to Glasgow a couple of times, and just kind of stayed in that general area. Went out and saw the Kelpies. Those are amazing. And there was some big mermaid statue out there too. I don't remember what it was called. But those are really cool because you can see them from the side of the road while you're driving around. We were just going to use the trains to get around, but I mean, this has been 10 years ago now, but it seemed like they're doing work on the railways, and the train that we wanted to get on was always down. That was going to where we wanted to go. The train was always down, so we'd either have to get on a bus and take forever to get there. So we gave up and rented a car. Fortunately for me, I know how to drive stick. My wife does as well, so that wasn't an issue. It makes me laugh. Nobody over here wants to drive a manual. So I wonder how people function if they travel overseas and they can only drive an automatic. Like, do they sit there and like just grind the transmission relentlessly until they figure it out trying to get out of the parking lot? Or do they pay a bunch of extra money to be able to rent an automatic? I prefer driving a manual. But you can't hardly buy one anymore. It's so frustrating. You're stuck with a very limited selection of cars if you try and find a manual these days in the States. Yeah, there is no comparison. But one of the things I made sure to do, because I think it is a valuable skill to have. I've got two boys. One's 18, one is turning 20 soon. So they're both driving now. But I went out and bought, this little, beater of a car that had a manual transmission in it to make sure that they knew how to drive stick. You have to learn how to drive manual, and now both of them drive cars with manual transmissions in them. So, like I said, for me, it's important that my kids knew how to drive a manual transmission. Lose stuff off the back of my disc. Like, I've got this styrofoam block with all their shoulder pads on it that I can't prime because it's cold. And because it's a much smoother surface, I don't just want to go ahead and paint those and then have them be all wonky because it's cold outside. All right, so I'm gonna try one of my old washes on his hair. This is called Devlin Mud. Just give it a good once over. I'm sure it's probably the exact same wash as Agrax Shade. It just predates it. I don't know. It's brown. But it looks very similar to my untrained eye. There's probably some, paint expert that's going to see this video and think, no, it's completely different color. I don't care. It's brown. I need a brown wash, and I wanted to use something other than Agrax Shade. All right, wait till that dries. And because hair is many, many different colors on a person's head, when that dries, we're going to do a quick dry brush with some Scrag Brown, and we'll see how it turns out. I'm just experimenting, so we'll see how it goes. Which is one of the, super fun things about painting these minis, is you get to try all sorts of different things to get different effects and whatnot. And you find what works for you and what you like, and you just remember that little recipe that you used and do it again, and that way you've got consistency between your minis. I've thought about orc, and of course I haven't. I've never played orcs in the past, and I don't know how much it. But aren't they a horde army? Don't you need like tons and tons of them, just like Tyranids? It's like you. Yeah. I enjoy. Oh, Not for paint. Oh, you like to paint? Yeah. I mean, I like to paint too, but it's just like the thought of having to paint, 80 different models just to get 1,000 points on the table just seems way blown out of proportion to me. And I know it's probably not that bad, but horde armies or swarm armies, it's like that's a lot of minis that you have to go through to get them on the table. Not saying it wouldn't be fun, not saying it wouldn't be cool, but man, that's a lot. All right, I'd say we're dry enough to do this. Yeah, well, yes and no, because I've seen some things online where there's a special paint that you can use that lets you actually electroplate your models. And so I've seen some like the Custodes minis are actually electroplated and like a gold metal, and it's like that's how I'd want to do it. But that's probably a huge ridiculous expense as well. Yeah, that'll work. Fairly brown, little red, little reddish tint to his little mop top there. I'm happy with it. Yeah, that I saw somebody post that on a YouTube video. I'm like, I have to try that because the pupils on the eye, I mean, they're super tiny, so maybe not get such a small one next time. But they definitely look the way they're supposed to. I don't have like super crazy eyes like I did on that one face. But I don't know if you have anything equivalent to Hobby Lobby over there. But I'm sure there's art supply stores over there that would have a similar type of pen. I don't know if I'd go with a 003, but maybe I think they have like let's see, this is a 0.15 millimeter line. I'm sure like a 0.5 millimeter would probably be better. If you already have fine point markers, I'd give them a shot. Okay. But yeah, they have definitely served their purpose, or it has definitely served its purpose for painting eyeballs. I will say that. I keep misplacing my brush. Oh yeah, I like drawing too, but I'm not very good at it. I mean, I just need more practice is my thing. Uh, Although I do have a little bit of an advantage. I was genetically passed some skills because my mom is a retired art teacher, so I can draw fairly well, and obviously I can paint somewhat decently. But I give my mom a lot of credit for that, especially with her encouragement getting into science fiction and fantasy type things. All right, you just got a few things left to do on this guy. Painting around the collar and then the metal sockets and stuff on the back of his head. The Black Templars, I mean, they can use any Space Marine vehicle. There's a couple that the Black Templars have their own variant of. Like they get a special data sheet and whatnot. Like the Impulsor comes with the Combat Patrol. So this is the one that I've painted so far. But they can use Land Raiders. Like there's a special Land Raider Crusader. And then like I said, basically any Space Marine vehicle they can use. Like even the little airplane things that they have, you can put them in your army list. And I know it's technically not a vehicle. It's a dreadnought, but they also get access to all the different variations of dreadnoughts. But since the Templars are more melee focused army, and because I think the mini looks cool, I picked up a Brutalis Dreadnought, which is on the shelf behind me. Yeah, so it's like that thing looks cool. So kind of rule of cool for your army. But I saw that and I'm like, they can have a Brutalis Dreadnought. That's awesome. And I've also seen like a kit that you can buy online. You can either order it or you can pay for the STL if you have a 3D printer that has like these big shoulder pads for the dreadnought that are covered in candles to make it more Black Templar themed. And it has like this gigantic power sword. Depending on what you want to do with it, will indicate what kind you want to get. I have 2 3D printers, but they're the filament type. So you know, they're great for making coasters or right there. You can make coasters with it. This that holds all my paints, I 3D printed that. Headphone stands, game controller holders, little hooks to put on the wall to hang pictures and oven mitts from can be 3D printed. Small picture frames. I guess you could do large picture frames. Yeah, if you're gonna be printing minis, definitely get a resin one. The resin printers are good at printing very small details and small items, and the filament printers are good for printing larger things. Like if you intend to do any type of cosplay stuff or costuming ideas. Give me 1 minute and I'll show you. Oops. So, of course, the Call of Duty video games, I've got. Oh, you're fine. I just. It's all part of the hobby. This is painted. It's 3D printed and painted. So I did the ghost mask from Call of Duty. It's not very well painted. I meant to go back and touch that up. It's just a bigger 3D print. Or if you've ever played Destiny 2 or Destiny the video game, either one or two. Of course, Cade 6, this is 3D printed. But no, the hobby comes in all sorts of shapes and sizes. Not just minis. One of these days, if I get I want a larger filament printer, just with a larger print base on it, as well as a resin printer, because printing helmets like that, I was basically using the entire build plate. I'm very fortunate to have a teeny tiny head. That's the only reason that thing fits me, and I was able to print it in as few pieces as possible. But anything larger than that, which basically just barely covers my face, won't fit on my on the print bed. So I'd have to slice it up into more pieces and hope that all the pieces line up when you're done with it. Alrighty. When I finish streaming tonight and finish painting tonight, I need to put my paints back in the holders so they're not scattered all across my desk and I can find them quicker. That's a bad habit I have. I finish with something, and then as soon as I finish with it, I leave it right where it's at. Drives the wife nuts. Like, why can't you ever put anything away? Because I remember where I put it last, so I can go look in that general area and find the last place that I had it. Blob of paint on my fingernail, and I don't know how I managed that. Alrighty, little doodads on the back of his head are painted. And to finish those up, grab the Nuln oil. Oil dries a little shinier. Paint pot would stay open. Give him a quick dab with that. And we have a completed face. And now that we have a completed face that's intended for this mini, we can have a second finished Neophyte. Because that was a little frustrating the other night. Finished painting the head, or finished painting the bodies, and one of them I couldn't put a head on because the head didn't fit right. I have played some various board games in the past. One that I really like to play was called Sheriff of Nottingham. It was a fun game. Dixit, I played, like, of course, all the common ones like Uno and Sorry, and your, super basic, everybody's played these games. I've played stuff like I play stuff like that, especially with the kids, like Monopoly and whatnot. Looks much nicer with a head attached. We'll set him over there so that glue can finish setting. And now I don't need the magnification glasses anymore. At least not for a little while. And as soon as the the weather's a little nicer. I'll get these guys sprayed with a clear coat. I use a high gloss clear coat because it dries harder and protects the paint better. And then I'll go back with a matte clear coat to dull them back down a little bit because shiny Space Marines look goofy. Like, so once the matte finishes on them, that's how they look. And then the finished base will look similar to that. And once again, my palette or wet palette is drying out. So add more water to that. That might be my next splurge purchase, is an actual wet palette instead of my Tupperware. Now, let's not drop super glue all over my desk because we forget to screw the cap back on. Okay. So now the question is, now I've got 2 Neophytes done. Do I paint these 2 Neophytes, or do I go back to my Initiates and finish those 2? I'm probably more concerned about losing my faces, so I think I'll stick with the Neophytes for now. The next town over from where I live had a place open up. Unfortunately, they're another casualty of COVID. They just never got all their business back after, COVID happened. But it's a really cool idea. We went to their pop-up events and everything. The whole premise of the store / restaurant, the business was called RPG, and it stood for Restaurant, Pub, and Games. They had all sorts of different board games you could check out. They hosted trivia nights. They had D&D nights. It was a really cool place to go and try out a board game if you haven't played it before, or because they're doing D&D events. They had several D&D groups that would meet there, and I was unfortunately, I was working all the time, never really had a chance to take advantage of it, but I always thought that was a neat idea for a business. And the few times that we went, we'd check out a couple of board games, play those. Yeah, it's they just had shelves and shelves and shelves of different board games. A buddy of mine had, he'd do game nights with his friends, so we played things like Mysterium and Dixit, and I don't know if I'm saying that right. Dixit. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Code names. The You Don't Know Jack games on mobile. We'd play a bunch of those. For an old cell phone I have, I had like the Gear VR headset, and there was a game on that we played a few times. It's called Keep Talking or You'll Explode. And so whoever was wearing the VR headset was looking at a bomb, and everybody else in the room was like reading the instruction manual. So the person wearing the headset had to tell you what they saw, and uh, everybody else had to tell you what you needed to do to defuse that part of the bomb. So that was, various different board games over the years, or game type things over the years. Always had a lot of fun with them. There, actually have it in the other room. There is the old Jim Henson movie, Labyrinth. They made a board game for that, and the miniatures in that are gray plastic. And I think they've got Ludo and Sir Didymus and Hoggle, and of course Jareth the Goblin King. And it's like, I'm, waiting for my painting skills to improve a little bit more, but I'd love to paint those. Uh, just to have, colored minis. Yes, David Bowie. Jareth the Goblin King. So yeah, I could go grab a little mini David Bowie to paint. Maybe I'll stream that some night. That'd be hilarious. I don't know how well it sold. Uh, I bought it for my wife as a Christmas present one year when I saw it. I was like, oh, because of course we, both love the Labyrinth movie. Because we grew up with it. We're born in the '80s, children of the '90s. So, I mean, that was part of our childhood. And when I saw that they'd made a Labyrinth board game, I was like, yep, definitely getting that for the wife. And, admittedly, myself as well. But I'm, until you said something about board games, I'd kind of forgot it was back there in the other room. I'm gently nudging my wife to get into mini painting. She's bought some models to paint, but hasn't started them yet. So maybe one of these days, I'll actually get her to start. Like we. Oh, believe me, I will. I will definitely do my research before trying to paint David Bowie. To find out exactly what colors I need for to make it look screen accurate. Of course, that whole box of, I mean, it's not like a massive box of figures, but like all the figures in that box, because like I said, it is, an important part of our childhoods. I would want to make sure that they were painted correctly. Apparently, I lied. I need these glasses still. My contacts are drying out because I'm a dum dum and don't take them out like I'm supposed to. I have to look into it. Like she's more into like the fantasy miniatures than 40K. When we're at the local games workshop, she saw the Lord of the Rings ones and wanted to pick some of those up. But we haven't gotten any of those yet. But this last weekend, we were taking my nephew and his girlfriend was visiting, and it was supposed to be, this last weekend was supposed to be, the first Saturday of January, supposed to be, Mini of the Month day. And when we got there, the minis hadn't come in yet. So we couldn't get the Mini of the Month, but in the next town over, it's a college town, so there's a much more active game culture there for tabletop and Dungeons and Dragons and anime and whatnot. So we took them to the various game stores, and my wife picked up a couple more D&D minis that she wants to paint, but has not started them as yet. But maybe I can convince her to do some painting with me. She tends to leave me alone on my streaming nights. We kind of have an agreement. Tuesdays and Thursdays are my streaming nights, and I've been spending them doing miniature painting because of Space Marine 2. That game came out, I'm like, oh, I need to go buy Space Marine minis and paint them now. Because typically it would be Tuesdays and Thursdays would be my streaming video game nights for like Call of Duty or whatever interesting game was out at the time that I could afford. But I said when Space Marine 2 came out, it's like, because I'd played the tabletop in the past, I was like, I really would really like to get into painting an army again and playing the tabletop again. So I convinced her to let me start a brand new army. Like I said, I've got some old Necrons from 5th edition, but they've done so many model updates. Like right after I quit playing, which I was a little bummed about, they did a huge model update for the Necrons. But I had a lot of life going on at that time that was not conducive to me wasting money on stupid things. So I kind of, at the time, was kind of forced to cut my losses on miniature wargaming. And ended up moving halfway across the country to get away from toxic people. And then just never, until, just recently, never found a reason or the money to pick the hobby back up. And then, like I said, Space Marine 2 came out. And that was it for me. I had to get back into it. The lore is so cool for so many of the factions. And Yeah, I had no idea that the whole Primaris controversy had happened. Just getting back into it, I'm like, all this stuff happened after I quit. Wow. Yeah. And sitting there like listening to different lore videos about different factions, I happened to come across Black Templars lore, and Black Templars basically said, your stupid rule book is stupid and we're going to do our own thing. Like, yep, I agree with that. I like that. And then you start learning about some of the named characters from Black Templar lore, particularly Grimaldus. And you're like, yeah, that's a cool character. I want to play his army. I want to be able to have him, on the field and use him in my army. So needless to say, he's sitting in a box on the shelf behind me. I just haven't built up. And I keep saying this over and over again. I haven't built up the confidence to paint Chaplain Grimaldus yet. And, when I put pictures of my minis on TikTok or whatever, I get all sorts of compliments on them, which I appreciate. And like while I'm painting, while I'm streaming, I always say this, as long as you're happy with how your model turns out in the end, you're successful. So I'm just like everyone else, I'm my own biggest critic, and I need to get over it and paint the minis that I want to see on the field or on the table. And I know it'll look fine, even if I do have some little oopsies here and there on the paint job. And other people that look at it will be like, wow, you did a really good job on that. I'll know where my mistakes were and I'll beat myself up over them. And I know I need to quit doing that. But like I said, everyone is their own biggest critic. And I just need to get over it and paint my minis, and how they turn out is how they turn out. And if at some point I feel my skills have improved to the point where I could do a better job, I can drop them in a tub of rubbing alcohol. All the paint will fall off of him and I can start over. And I know all this, and I'm still hesitant to just go ahead and bite the bullet and paint him. Like I said, and I say it all the time commenting on TikToks or while I'm live. It's like, as long as you're happy with the result you got on your mini, then you did it right. And I've seen other people's minis on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and stuff like that, where they don't have the most amazing paint job in my eyes, or they have a paint style. Like there's this really gritty, chalky paint style that some people love. I can't stand it. I think it looks horrible, but they're super excited about how their model turned out. It's like, who am I to tell them your model looks like ass? No. If you're happy with how it turned out, you're successful. But then again, there are some people who only get on the internet to fight with other people, and they will tell them their model looks bad. Because some people are just like that. And I don't know if you've ever watched any of his videos, but there's a guy on YouTube that goes by Northern Exile. Does all these hobby nightmare videos. He's like, he would tell those people that just want to shit on other people for no reason to go get in the sea. And I like that saying. Just off with you, get in the sea. But being a delivery driver as my real job, this is my hobby. I would like it to turn into something that earned a little bit of money to buy more plastic soldiers, but is what it is. But Northern Exile, I like listening to his YouTube videos while I'm driving around making my deliveries. The best, in my opinion, the best lore narrator I've come across is Voldemort. I'm sure you've heard of him if you listen to audiobooks and the like. He has the most incredible voice for narrating 40K. And I have no problem saying, I would fight you if you disagree. His voice reminds me of the late actor John Hurt, who's the Chancellor in V for Vendetta, and the Ron Perlman Hellboy. He was Hellboy's dad or father figure. That's what Voldemort's voice sounds like to me. And even John Hurt back in the day had a TV series called The Storyteller, where he narrated fantasy stories. Anyway, as I'm rambling about how his voice sounds, like Voldemort writes some of his own stories to tell, and like some of them are just amazing. I've heard Luton's a good one. I can't say that I haven't had the chance. I just haven't taken the time to listen to his videos yet. Voldemort sounds like he really gets into his Black Templar videos, which is part of the reason why I'm like, yeah, after listening to a Voldemort Black Templar video, I was like, yeah, I definitely had to play Black Templars. They just Voldemort makes them sound so cool. A healthy dose of cynicism is always a good thing. It's like every once in a while I think, well, maybe I should do a lore video. Drawn to the bad guys. Yeah, I have, an elevated, like high up looking down at a broad area understanding of, most 40k lore. I haven't done any real deep dives into it myself, mostly because I'm driving a truck all day and don't have the time to look it up. And by the time I get home, it's like I have home things that need to be taken care of, or I need to get the stream started and paint my minis or whatever. Yeah. And the 40k universe, I don't know. With the exception of Tyranids, I don't know if there's a truly 100% bad guy faction. Unless there's, some greater purpose behind the hive mind that no one knows about. They're just, this, biomass that wants to consume more biomass. Yeah, it's like, the Necrons, arguably, the oldest race in 40k. It's like, at the dawn of their civilization, they were doing what they needed to do to survive and got taken advantage of by another faction that they ended up utterly destroying. But, even from a certain point of view, the Necrons could be considered good guys. The Tau, they're just, the young, going from oldest to youngest factions. They're just, trying to expand their civilization, just like we did when we figured out how to make starships and whatnot. And they had their own method of doing it. So, and of course they come across, space marines who are like, no, you don't look like us, so time for you to die. They're just defending their right to exist as well. Orcs aren't either good or bad. They just want to run around and fight everybody. The Eldari or Drukhari? Because the Eldari have helped humanity somewhat. Drukhari, I think, is a little more on the, just a-hole side of things. Oh, no worries. I knew what you meant. Or assumed what you meant. I said I do the I'll do the same thing every once in a while. I mean, to be talking about one faction and talk about another. Nothing to really apologize for. I mean, it's like calling your kids the wrong name. When you're getting after one and you say the other one's name, or your pets, same deal. Like, my cat will get into something and I want to yell at my cat, but because my dog, or our new puppy, has been getting into the most stuff recently, I'll say the puppy's name. And then she just kind of looks at me like, what did I do? It's like, nothing, I was trying to yell at the cat. But it's all good. And I need to quit painting in my lap and paint on the desk where you can see what I'm doing. Not that, making a gray model turn black with paint is really that exciting at this point. I mean, part of me wishes I wasn't, so meticulous about the painting these guys, so I'd get them done faster. But the other part of me that really wants my minis to look really nice is like, no, you must take your time as long as it takes, and you'll have perfect looking minis to put on the tabletop. And it doesn't matter. Much as I try, and I do think, I'm not gonna break my arm patting myself on the back, but I do think my minis turn out fairly well. So I'm not upset at my painting ability, but I do think I go a little overboard at times, trying to make sure everything is painted exactly the way it's supposed to be painted. Once again, everyone is their own biggest critic. And also, by taking longer, it means the stream lasts for longer. Aside from the time limit, I just have more things. It's gonna be more episodes of painting and more exposure as I'm painting. Big blob of something in my brush that needs to go. So since you're working, the reason I don't prime them black, and this might sound a little ridiculous, is because I had to paint the shoulder pads white. I know the shoulder pads aren't even on this guy, but that's that's the reasoning behind it. I have a big can of gray primer, so I spray everything with gray. So I can do the whites easier over it. %, that's the reason. And even if I did use the black primer, I would still go over them with a coat of just regular paint, because the finish you get from the paint in the pots is different from the finish you get in the can. So if I'm gonna have to paint them anyway all over, it's easier to see spots that I've missed if I'm covering up gray. So easier to paint white over on the shoulder pads, and to make sure I don't miss a spot while painting the other colors. And I don't use white primer because if for some reason I can't get into a spot with the brush, I don't want little white spots in like you guys' armpit somewhere that are like super visible, because you get these little cracks and crevices in the models in places where you can't always get your brush in there to get good paint coverage. But for, let's see, the next, because I need to pick up a second combat patrol. I have to paint a whole nother combat patrol because it fits into my army list for the most part. I will probably prime the second impulsor that I'll paint. I'll probably prime that in black because that is a lot of black paint to try and do with a brush. So that might be the exception. That, and I don't know, I go back and forth on whether or not I want to prime the dreadnought in black when I get to painting it, because once again, you got those large flat sections that you want to have smooth paint on, and that is very difficult to do with tiny paintbrushes. And if you use larger paintbrushes, you still end up with a lot of streaks from brush strokes and whatnot. But I will say it is very frustrating, using super thin coats of paint. As you're trying to paint these guys, you inevitably rub the paint off on hard edges. So you always have to go over your model over and over again to make sure you didn't miss something, or rub the paint off of it and didn't notice it. And I will be glad when I don't have any more Neophytes to paint. Because compared to, the big blocky power armor, these guys are, their legs are closer together, their arms are closer to their bodies in a lot of places. These guys are just a little more difficult to paint. So I'm glad my army will only have 8 of them. But I think that's good for the black for now. I know I'll have to go back and touch some stuff up later on. Take some extra time cleaning my brush tonight. Let the paint flow back a little bit too far. But fortunately, this is a cheap brush from Hobby Lobby, so if I have to, I can always run out and pick up another one. Unless it's on a Sunday, because they're not open on Sundays. That should be okay for now. I'll probably give it a... Just because we're going to keep going, I'll probably give it a good rinse and alcohol later. You can see at the back of the brush tip there, the black flowed up the bristles a little bit farther than I wanted to, which can make the tip of your brush not stay together as well. That being said, we got about 20 minutes left for the evening. Start knocking this tabard out. Use some Xandri dust as the first paint that we put on here. When painting the tabards, I try and go with my brush strokes, the direction the fabric is flowing. That way, if there are any brush lines, as I add more layers of paint, it just looks like strings in the fabric. At least that's what I tell myself. And if I go over the edges a little bit, it's fine. eventually cover that up when I touch up the black again. And I do get a little bit of frustrated trying to get the back side of the tabards done on these guys. It's not the... I don't do a whole lot of detail on them, but if you can, pick them up and kind of see it from the side, I'm going to at least have some paint on there. That way you can tell, oh yeah, that's part of the tabard. But I'm, not going to go into super detail on a part of the menu that you can't really see. Mainly because that happens. I get big blobs of paint where I don't want them. But it's fine. And you'll hear me say a lot, it's fine. I'll go touch it up later. Because that's what happens. I go back and I touch it up later. And then I'll get paint somewhere else and have to touch it up again. And get paint somewhere else and have to touch it up again. It's all part of the process. We'll get a couple of, nice thin even coats down. Just making sure that we're getting that gray primer covered up real well. I say that while I'm painting where you can't see what I'm doing. Hi, honey. Okay. Hello, puppy. Hello, puppy. This is the hyperactive puppy. No, I don't need you to lick me in the mouth. Apparently she wanted to know what was going on behind closed doors. Oh. Well, I'm sorry. I haven't had the cat. She's just been in here hiding behind the heater.
Nezuko.
Alrighty. But that's about as good as you can get on the tabard there with our first color. So we'll let that dry a little bit as we look around our desk for our mini pots of paint to find the Agrax Earthshade. And when I say, I have a bad habit of not putting my paints back in the holders as I use them. Yeah, this is what happens. I use these for a tiny amount of paint and then just leave them sitting on my desk instead of putting them back where they go in the order that I need them. Which, after the stream tonight, I will put back in order somewhat. Need a drink. Alrighty. Make sure Agraxar shade is shaken up fairly well. And then, kind of like we did with the Xandri dust, just paint in the direction the fabric would be flowing. That way you get more of a cloth effect. As we go down the front of the model, try not to let too much sit in one place for too long, so you don't end up with what's called coffee staining, which I've noticed has happened on a few of my minis as I've been painting them. End up getting like a little spot of like extra shade and then end up with like this weird splotchy parts on the mini. On the back side of the tabard, I'm not as concerned, so just kind of fling some in there. There we go, got a little bit more of an effect done on those. And then as that dries, we go back to the original color Xandri dust, and just at the top edges of the fabric, we kind of pick out a couple little details where the fabric kind of comes up to a point as it's folded over. Bring that original color back onto the tabard. I'm sorry if my camera keeps vibrating. As I've said before, it's my cell phone. And some people like to message me or email me or just random apps getting random notifications while I'm streaming. So if you ever see my camera kind of buzz around, that is what's going on. But there you go, kind of brighten sections of the tabard back up a little bit. Just on those, raised up spots. And then we will swap to a finer brush. And again, on those sections of the tabard that are a little bit more raised up, we go in for another highlight. This time we're using Ushadi bone or Ushapti bone. I don't know how to say it. It's that color. Of course, when I got the pot from Games Workshop, all they had was the airbrush version of the color, which I don't mind. It's already thinned out fairly well. Then again, you go just super fine lines along those higher spots on the fabric. And it just brings out, a little bit more depth in the fabric. I say we'll go in again and touch up the black around it, but gives it those nice highlights, makes it look a little bit more like cloth, like the inconsistency in the colors. And then once we get the rest of them, the mini done, we'll go back in there and you do like one more, super fine highlight on just like the highest points of the fabric. But I mean, that's more than enough done for tabletop purposes. And even on like the finished one, there's only like the slightest of differences. I suppose I should grab the other one because that's the same body. Where it's just slightly brighter on the folds. But I think that's probably we're going to go ahead and wrap it up tonight. Thanks, Button, for coming by and watching and chit-chatting. I definitely appreciate it. It's always good to have a return viewer. but I have to get up early and commute another hour through fresh snow to get to work, which is always fun. But bright and early every day. But again, thanks for coming by. I always enjoy having you here, and we'll see you next time.